No one talks about the burnout. Scroll through homesteading videos and you'll see thriving gardens, full pantries, handmade fences, fresh bread cooling on wooden tables. What you don't see is exhaustion. What you don't see is the quiet moment when someone stands in their yard and wonders why something that was supposed to bring freedom now feels like pressure. Most homesteads don't fail because of lack of skill. They fail because of overcommitment. When people first discover the idea of self-sufficiency, it feels powerful. Grow your own food, raise animals, harvest rainwater, build soil, preserve everything, produce more than you consume. It sounds like independence, but without restraint it becomes expansion without limits. More beds, more animals, more systems, more responsibility, and every system you add requires maintenance. Chickens need daily care, goats need fencing checks. Large gardens need watering, weeding, harvesting. Fruit trees need pruning, firewood needs splitting. None of these tasks are unreasonable on their own, but stacked together, they compound. What begins as a dream slowly becomes a schedule. And here's the part that's uncomfortable to admit. Most homestead burnout doesn't happen dramatically. It happens quietly. You skip one harvest. You delay one repair. You feel slightly behind. You tell yourself you'll catch up next weekend, but next weekend has its own list. And slowly the joy drains out of it. At the beginning, effort feels meaningful. You're building something, every project feels like progress. But effort without design eventually turns into obligation. That's the turning point. Low input. Living isn't anti-homesteading. It's anti-friction, because friction accumulates. And when friction exceeds your available energy, something gives, usually your motivation. In the early years, I thought success meant maximizing output. More food grown, more systems installed, more proof that I could do it all. But I was measuring the wrong thing. The real metric isn't how much you can produce in one season. It's whether you can sustain the system for 10 years without resentment. Because sustainability doesn't just apply to soil, it applies to you. The hidden mistake most new homesteaders make isn't a technical one. It's emotional. They build their systems around excitement instead of endurance. In the beginning, everything feels possible. You're energized, you're motivated. You watch others doing incredible things and think, if they can do it, I can too. So you start stacking projects. A bigger garden this year, chickens next spring, fruit trees along the fence, maybe bees, maybe meat birds, maybe expand the beds again. Each addition feels small in isolation. But here's what rarely gets calculated. Every system has a maintenance tail. Planting a fruit tree takes an afternoon. Pruning it takes years. Building a chicken coop takes a weekend. Feeding, cleaning, protecting, and winterizing takes daily presence. Installing raised beds takes a few days. Weeding, watering, harvesting, and replanting never stop. The excitement phase focuses on installation. Burnout comes from maintenance. And maintenance doesn't trend on social media. No one posts about the 5th straight day of hauling water in the heat. No one celebrates repairing the same fence section again. No one films the mental load of remembering 10 different harvest windows. But that mental load is real. Decision fatigue creeps in. What needs watering? What needs harvesting? Which animal needs attention? What's about to bolt? What's about to rot? When your systems multiply, so do the decisions. And decision fatigue drains more energy than physical work. I started noticing that I wasn't physically overwhelmed. I was mentally crowded. Too many moving parts. Too many shoulds, too many small urgencies. And here's the trap. Because homesteading feels virtuous, it's hard to scale back. Reducing systems can feel like failure. Selling animals feels like giving up. Shrinking the garden feels like retreating. Letting something go feels like losing progress. But what if scaling down is actually optimization? Low input living isn't about doing less, because you can't handle more. It's about doing what compounds and eliminating what constantly drains. There's a difference between expansion and leverage. Expansion increases workload. Leverage increases output without increasing effort. Most burnout happens when expansion outpaces leverage. When I finally admitted I was overextended, I asked myself a simple question. If I had to maintain this entire setup alone during a difficult year, could I? The honest answer was no, and that realization changed how I viewed every addition after that. Burnout doesn't arrive with a dramatic crash. It whispers first. And if you learn to recognize the whispers, you can correct course long before anything collapses. There are 3 early warning signs almost every overwhelmed homesteader experiences, but rarely names. The first is constant catch-up mode. You're never quite ahead. There's always something that should have been done yesterday. A bed that needs weeding. a repair that's overdue, produce that should have been preserved already. You move from task to task, not because you're building momentum, but because you're preventing decline. The system isn't growing stronger on its own. It's surviving because you're intervening constantly. That's not resilience, that's dependency. A healthy homestead should have breathing room. Missing a single task shouldn't create a cascade of problems. But when you notice that even short absences cause visible deterioration, that's a design flaw, not a discipline flaw. The second warning sign is resentment creeping into routine. This one is harder to admit. Tasks that once felt meaningful start to feel heavy. Feeding animals feels obligatory instead of grounding. Harvesting feels rushed instead of satisfying. Even watering can feel like a burden rather than care. You still love the idea of the homestead, but you're starting to dislike the daily experience of it. That emotional friction is important data, because resentment doesn't come from work itself, it comes from imbalance. When output expectations exceed sustainable input, enjoyment erodes. And once enjoyment disappears, burnout accelerates quickly. The third warning sign is loss of optionality. This is subtle. You realize you can't leave for more than a day without arranging help. You can't ignore a system without consequences. You can't take a slow week without visible decline. Your setup has no slack. Everything depends on constant motion. Optionality is freedom. If your systems don't allow for rest, illness, travel, or simply lower energy seasons, they aren't sustainable long term. Low input living is built around one core principle. Systems should tolerate fluctuation. Weather fluctuates, energy fluctuates, life fluctuates. If your design only works when you're operating at peak capacity, it's fragile. When I stepped back and evaluated my setup through this lens, I saw clearly where I had overbuilt. Too many annual crops that demanded precise timing. Too many animals relative to available labor. Too many systems stacked without overlap. Each piece worked individually, together they created pressure. And pressure compounds silently. The hardest part wasn't identifying the strain. It was admitting that scaling back might be smarter than pushing through. Because pushing through feels strong, but designing for endurance is wiser. When I finally accepted that burnout wasn't a motivation problem, it was a design problem, I stopped asking, how can I manage this better? And started asking, what can I remove? That question is uncomfortable, because subtraction feels like loss at first. We're conditioned to believe growth equals addition. More beds means more food. More animals means more independence. More systems mean more security, but every addition carries a maintenance cost. And maintenance is where most homesteads quietly collapse. So I did something that felt almost backwards. I audited everything, not emotionally, practically. I asked 3 simple questions about each system on the property. Does this produce consistently? Does this require frequent intervention? Does this create stress during busy seasons? Anything that failed those questions became a candidate for reduction. Some annual beds were cut in half and replaced with heavier mulch and perennial plants. Yield per square foot dropped slightly, but labor dropped dramatically. And yield per hour actually increased. Some animals were rehomed, not because I disliked them, not because they weren't useful, but because their care schedule eliminated flexibility. Once they were gone, mornings slowed down. Travel became possible again. Mental load decreased instantly. Some projects were paused indefinitely. That was the hardest part. Letting go of future plans you were excited about. But excitement is seasonal, endurance is permanent. What surprised me most was this. When I reduced moving parts, everything remaining improved. With fewer beds, I maintained soil better. With fewer animals, their care improved. With fewer simultaneous projects, focus returned. Energy concentrated instead of scattered, and concentration builds quality. This is something rarely discussed in homesteading culture. There's pride in doing a lot, but there's strength in doing a few things exceptionally well, and sustainably. Low input living doesn't mean low output. It means output that doesn't require constant rescue. There's a big difference. I also began designing overlap into my systems. Instead of isolated tasks, I looked for connections. Mulch reduced watering, perennials reduced replanting, chickens rotated through resting beds to reduce weeds. Trees provided shade that reduced evaporation. Overlap creates leverage. When one system supports another, total effort decreases. But when systems operate independently, effort multiplies. Burnout is often a symptom of isolated design. Each piece demands its own time, attention, and resources. Nothing feeds into anything else. And eventually, you become the glue holding it all together. That's fragile. Because if you get sick, busy, or simply tired, the whole structure strains. When I shifted toward fewer overlapping systems, something changed that I didn't expect. The homestead felt calmer, not smaller, not weaker, calmer. There were fewer emergencies, fewer time-sensitive reactions, fewer evenings where I felt behind. And that calm is the real measure of sustainability, because sustainability isn't proven in your best season, it's proven in your hardest one. Every homestead will eventually face a low-energy season. It might be illness, it might be financial strain, it might be family responsibilities. It might simply be exhaustion, but it will come. And when it does, your design will either protect you or expose you. Most people build their systems during high-energy seasons. Motivation is high, weather is good. Progress feels easy, expansion feels natural, but very few people ask the most important question: will this still function when I'm operating at 50%? Because that's the real test. A resilient homestead doesn't require you at full capacity all the time. It allows for fluctuation. To design for that, you need margin. Margin in time, margin in labor, margin in expectations. That starts with accepting a simple truth. You don't need to maximize every square foot. Maximization often eliminates margin. When every bed must be planted, every animal must produce, every system must perform at peak efficiency, there's no slack. And without slack, small disruptions create large stress. I began deliberately underplanting, leaving space. Not because I couldn't grow more, but because space absorbs fluctuation. If I missed a planting window, nothing collapsed. If weeds appeared in one bed, I had others producing. If I needed a week off, the system tolerated it. Margin looks inefficient on paper, but it's powerful in practice. I also shifted toward crops and systems that tolerate inconsistency. Perennials instead of purely annual dependence. Mulched beds instead of bare soil. Deep watering instead of daily surface maintenance. Animals sized appropriately for available labor. The goal wasn't perfection, it was durability. Another key shift was redefining success. Early on, success meant output totals. How much food did I grow? How many jars did I preserve? How much meat did I raise? Now success looks different. Did the system function without stress? Did I enjoy the process? Did the workload remain steady instead of chaotic? Did the homestead support life instead of dominating it? That's a better metric. Because if your homestead consumes all your energy, it defeats the purpose of building it in the first place. Low input living isn't about abandoning ambition. It's about aligning ambition with longevity. There's wisdom in asking, can I still love this in 10 years? If the honest answer is uncertain, something needs redesign. Here's the truth most people only realize after burnout hits. Strength doesn't come from how much you can handle. It comes from how little you're forced to handle. There's a big difference. A homestead that survives because you push through exhaustion isn't strong, it's dependent. A homestead that continues functioning during your low-energy seasons, and strength is built through design, not discipline. Over time, I stopped asking how to produce more. I started asking how to need less intervention. Fewer fragile crops, fewer time-sensitive systems, fewer daily obligations that couldn't be postponed, not because I wanted less abundance, but because I wanted sustainable abundance. There's a version of homesteading that feels heroic. Early mornings, late nights, endless projects, constant improvement. And for a season, that feels good. But hero mode isn't a lifestyle, it's a sprint. Low input living is built around endurance. It's about designing systems that don't collapse when enthusiasm fades. Systems that forgive missed days. Systems that improve quietly in the background. That often means prioritizing perennials over constant replanting. It means building soil so fertility compounds without constant management. It means choosing animal numbers that fit your worst month, not your best. It means leaving margin instead of filling every gap. And it means redefining pride. Because pride in exhaustion is common. Pride in restraint is rare. But restraint is what keeps you here long term. If you look at your homestead right now and feel stretched thin, that's not failure. That's information. It's a signal that something expanded faster than leverage. The solution isn't quitting, it's simplifying. Remove one draining system, reduce one oversized area. Pause one expansion plan. Create one layer of margin. Small subtractions can change everything. A sustainable homestead should feel steady. Not frantic, not overwhelming. Not dependent on perfect consistency. Steady. Because the real goal isn't to prove you can do it all. The goal is to build something that supports your life instead of consuming it. That's what low input living is about. Design over hustle, endurance over expansion. Calm over chaos. If this resonates, stay with the channel. We're continuing to break down common homesteading habits and rebuilding them into systems that grow stronger without growing heavier. Because the strongest homestead isn't the biggest one. It's the one you can maintain without losing yourself.